Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we greet the Minister of Finance and Corporate Affairs, Mr. Arun Jaitley, who will be speaking on the topic, the pros and cons of breaking the Pakistan impasse, some hard choices, airstrikes, and we have session moderator Raj Chingappa on stage. Raj, over to you.
Thank you, Avantika, and thank you, Arun. And good to see you back to work.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, just a couple of hours ago, the Pakistan National Assembly was passing a resolution to give Imran or nominate Imran Khan for the Nobel Prize. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I have absolutely no reaction to it. When you suppress reality and live in a world without complete information.
Slightly closer.
These are the inevitable consequences.
But Mr. Khan apparently wanted to speak to the Prime Minister. He said in Parliament that he tried to phone him. Did the Prime Minister not take his call? Did he really call?
Well, I'm not privy to this, and even if I were, what is to be shared in such situations in a larger national interest is shared in a particular manner by government spokespersons. But the fact of the matter is you can't have a real policy and an ostensible policy. And nations have to be judged by the real policy, the de facto policy which is being implemented. And the de facto policy which is being implemented is that not only India, if there is a major terror strike anywhere in the world, be it 9/11, be it Paris, you have a Pakistani footprint almost available. And whether it was Pathankot, or it was Uri, or it was Mumbai, or it was the Indian Parliament, or the Srinagar Assembly in the past, or the latest in Pulwama, there is voluminous evidence available. And in the recent case, the incontrovertible evidence is that those who did it, the Foreign Minister of Pakistan admitted that they are in Pakistan. He even knew about his state of health. So they know a lot more. So the organization which has admitted it, what more evidence do you want? It's geographically located there. Its entire terror infrastructure operates out of there. The training of the so-called homegrown also is at their behest. The indoctrination is at their behest. And therefore, that's the real policy. And I don't think the world which has conventionally spoken in one voice against terror really rewards those who are the perpetrators of terror itself.
Now, the return of our brave heart Wing Commander Abhinandan, is that an opportunity to de-escalate, or do we still sort of maintain a tough posture on this?
Well, I think India's position on terrorism will remain unchanged. And it will remain unchanged till such time that there are significant steps being taken really to address the roots of terror in that country.
And Balakot, is that the strike that we did? Is that the new normal? Is that a new doctrine?
Well, I don't think I'm competent enough in a public discourse to really go into the military strategies. But India over the last few decades is a very important nation in the world. We have a lot of diplomatic clout to the world. Our economic strength is increasing. We are the fastest growing economy. We are the 6th largest. Hopefully this year we'll be the 5th largest. Over the next decade, we'll be amongst the top 3. That's our economic power. And we've also established, not only now, but conventionally in all the conventional wars with our neighbor, our military superiority. And that, if at all, has increased.
But in terms of the doctrine that we are, have struck mainland Pakistan.
Well, I think
what's the big message?
According to me, as I said, India's position on eliminating terrorism because the cost of terror to Indian society are huge. It's cost in terms of human life, it's cost in terms of the kind of difficulty for our people it creates, the kind of people who die, our security forces die, our ordinary people die. We make a large part of our national wealth being spent and our national earnings being spent on our security apparatus, which nations which are more comfortable with their neighbors don't do that kind of a thing. And it has its own social and economic consequences in countries. It has impacted upon us. And therefore, India has really to attack these roots of terror. And whatever is the appropriate strategy for it, whether it's diplomatic or it's military, and what kind of a military strategy is really for the experts of that field to decide.
You had, in a recent function, talked about India doing an Osama bin Laden sort of strike that the US did. Was that unveiling a new policy, or was there just...
You see, I think it's really for my friends who handle Indian television to decide. I was at a Clean Ganga function. And I gave 10 illustrations that if we can have 99% rural sanitation, if we can build 12,000 kilometers of highways in a year, if we can have every home electrified, if we can have, let's say, every house connected to the banking system, and if, when on security, we used to wonder that if other countries can do it, why can't we? So this was one of the 10 illustrations I gave of India's capacity. Then why on earth can't we clean up the Ganga? So that's the argument, but we live in a real world, so the media saw something else.
Okay. One of the criticisms, though, has been that not just the NDA government, but the UPA government, is that there has been no sustained policy against Pakistan, that we are reactive, episodic in the way we deal with Pakistan.
You see, you can't really say that every situation, however unconventional, unacceptable, will be dealt with in a particular manner. India has consistently had one policy, that is that talks and terror can't go together. There was once at Sharm el-Sheikh a slight dilution of that policy when the UPA 1 was in power, or it was the UPA 2 if I remember correctly the dates. And even then they had to dilute it themselves. And therefore this one policy has been correct, but has been consistent as far as India is concerned. In fact, if you see the January 2004 agreement between Prime Minister Vajpayee and President Musharraf, it precisely says so, that we talk if we can ensure that the Pakistani land is not used for encouraging terror against India. So that's a part of the joint agreement that they had in January 2004. And nobody has really disputed in India, irrespective of which government has been in power, that one principle. And governments by and large have stood to it. Now, how much action do you take after, let's say, a particular episode? That I again said is not really for the social media army or for the non-military experts to decide.
What is the paradigm shift that the NDA government brought to the way we deal with Pakistan? There also was this roller coaster relationship we had. The Prime Minister went across.
I think when Pakistan makes an offer to any government that we will try and ensure that we clamp down on other terrorist organizations which are working against India, at sometimes governments have felt that, all right, let's give the alternative discourse a possibility. But then every time you've tried that, you had the attack on Parliament, you had the attack on Mumbai, you had Pathankot, you had Uri. And therefore, I think it will be too naive for us in India not to learn the lesson.
But if there is another Pulwama attack, What would be the consequence of that?
I won't discuss hypothetical situations because you watch television programs at 9 o'clock, you'll get the answer. It's not for me to speculate.
So what next? Are we de-escalating or are we still on the brink?
As I said, I'm not going to get caught in these phrases merely for the purposes of your wanting to extract a headline from me. India's position on terror will remain uncompromising. We'll be very firm and hard against it.
Now, the other thing that you've been firm and hard about has been our Kashmir policy. And we've sent more security personnel in there, could be for elections, as well as we have banned the Jamaat currently. Is there going to be any reaching out to the people? Because one way is, has our Kashmir policy failed? You all were in government there. What have you all done to win over Kashmir?
Well, I think your question is for a very brief period of history. I think when you want a real answer to this, you must actually go back 7 decades. And if you go back 7 decades and ask yourself a question, that the perception which the leadership of that moment had, that all right, we'll have a constitutional relationship of a particular kind, we'll have a separate status, and after that everything will become extremely comfortable. And then analyze what has happened over 7 decades. Has the journey been towards integration, or has the separatist status concept, a flawed concept in history which moved towards separatism? I think there is only one answer to this question. And therefore, there's one aspect of your question where I agree with you. In the entire Kashmir policy of India, whether it's the government or the people of India, we have to carry the people of Kashmir with us. And therefore, their economic prosperity, their physical security, whether in Jammu and Kashmir or elsewhere, that's of utmost importance. Our battle is against the separatists. Our battle is against the terrorists. And therefore, the people in this battle have to be on our side. We can't afford to alienate them. So any policy has to particularly take care of the people. But at the same time, if we feel that those terrorists are going to come on a negotiating table and the strength of the mainstream parties and their positioning is going to expand and become so acceptable, well, I'm afraid that some of the mainstream parties, even in the last fortnight, have not lived up to the expectation which the country had from them. And therefore, if you are actually going to support this, if those who created the Hizbul Mujahideen, those who did the ideological indoctrination, those who ensured that Kashmir conventionally had a very modern Islam, the burqas were not seen there, the veil was not seen there. It was a modern society. It was unknown. Any kind of communal strife was unknown in recent history. And suddenly you had this whole journey from Sufism towards Wahhabism taking place in the last 2.5 decades in that state. And therefore, unless you are able to ensure that those who are separatists or those who are laying down the foundation for separatism and terrorism, they have to be tackled in a particular manner. And they have very clearly announced that it's a battle against India. And if you consciously see, it's not based merely what Panditji and others thought that the Kashmiriyat identity would be maintained. In that identity, there is no issue. But now, it's not only the valley, the Chinar Valley, the Pir Panjal. So it's from a regional identity, it's extended to a religious identity. And therefore, I think organizations like the Jamaat, which have played a very, very hostile role as far as India's interests are concerned, the separatists, now the whole of the country is asking a question. Well, they are the ones who are encouraging terrorism, and we are protecting them at the cost of the taxpayer. They are the ones who are getting funds from outside, and almost unaccounted. Well, we must look the other way. And therefore, I think, whereas we have to be extremely positive in ensuring opportunity, security, well-being of the Kashmiri people, certainly when you look at the separatists and terrorists, they will have to be looked at in a different way.
But your government was in coalition with the PDP over there,
Well,
the BJP. What did you all do? You all had
Well,
the
I'll tell you.
opportunity as well.
I'll tell you.
And
You see, that was a very unconventional experiment we did, because we didn't want to be caught in dogmas. And the experiment was, and I, speaking for myself, honestly believed, and I still believe, that the role of the mainstream parties in Kashmir has to be positive and it has to be encouraged. Because we need a democratic process there, we need the mainstream parties to involve. So either of the two national parties which has a presence there, the BJP or the Congress, will have to learn to work with the mainstream parties in the state in order to ensure that the mainstream space and the space for governance increases. It's an experiment based on that philosophy. And national parties then tie up with those with whom they ideologically don't agree with, but it's in a peculiar situation of the state. I have no hesitation in saying that the experiment didn't work. Because the roots of those who we thought will now get into the mainstream and speak the mainstream language can't be to obstruct the work of security into fighting separatism and terror.
now, take the Pulwama incident, where you had supposedly a local do a suicide bomb attack. The opposition and others are saying it's time to look at that massive intelligence failure that happened. What is your reaction to that comment?
Well, while I was recently in the US, and I had a lot of time to read and write, I used two phrases. One I said was the compulsive contrarians in India. And the second I said was the Nawabs of negativity. So we have a fair share of them in India. And I think in any democracy, we have to concede them their space, because otherwise democracy itself will become boring. For instance, some of the Nawabs of negativity manufactured another Balakot in the POK. And they said, which Balakot is it? They didn't even bother to look at the map that the second Balakot is in Poonch in India, and our Air Force is not foolhardy that it will attack with a missile technology our own land. So we have a fair share of them. Now, as far as intelligence is concerned, for every encounter that takes place and every day you see breaking news, terrorists being killed, our intelligence agencies are doing a very significant work. The terrorists choose the place and target and the time of their choice. The intelligence network is able to prevent not in one or two, but in literally hundreds of cases. Because if you look at the last 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, it's in hundreds of cases that they've prevented it. So let us concede to these compulsive contrarians a space. Oh, in one case. The Congress party also asked this question. Well, we can ask the same about 2611. But I don't think India's, while we concede space for this kind of a thought, but Indian public opinion, I don't think is going to waste too much breath or time on this.
But surely there are lessons out of that we need to correct.
Well, the lessons are learned by agencies, either security or our intelligence agencies at every stage. The Balakot action could not have been succeeded without the success of our forces and our other agencies. And therefore, I think the national mood is one of positivity towards our various institutions. Well, there is a small, minuscule minority which thinks otherwise. It happens in a democracy.
Now, the other thing that the opposition has stressed on, and in fact, the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs has also said, on the Balakot strike, while the armed forces has said that they've struck and many people have died, many of the terror groups and their camps have been wiped out, they are asking, where are the photos? Where's the evidence of that? For the surgical strike, the press had seen the pictures of the strike and everything. Why hasn't the government...
It's a very irresponsible stand.
Okay.
The armed forces must have, and our security and intelligence agencies must have a full leeway in dealing with situations. And if anybody wants operational details to be made public so that next time there is a difficulty, he certainly doesn't understand the system and must not pollute India's public discourse on account of his own lack of information. No security agencies ever share operational details. And who's asking for this? Those who are in any case extremely disappointed that Balakot succeeded.
Well, the opposition says that the government, your government is playing politics with Pulwama.
Well, I'll tell you, the whole country is speaking in one language. If you don't take any action against terror and just allow it to go the way 26/11 went, then the question would be the other way around. And I don't think this is a time. There are enough spaces where they can, in the democratic space, they can criticize governments. But on national security, when the whole country is speaking in one voice, what is this politics that for 2 days you make a pretense of being shoulder to shoulder with the government, and then you certainly say, well, now I'm going to speak some other language. Now look at the kind of language. 21 political parties met and said this is being done for reasons of domestic politics. Immediately the Pakistani government, their ministers, their television lapped it up and says, well, this is our case, that's what we are saying. There is no Pakistani hand in Pulwama. The government of India is doing it for political reasons. And then when Pakistan is denying that anything else happened in Balakot, the West Bengal Chief Minister says, give me the evidence. The anonymous friends who you were referring to just now also say, give me the evidence. The Pakistan people in that region I saw on television channels today were speaking. And I think I was personally very disappointed when I saw a 2-minute intervention by our former Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. Mad rush for self-destruction by two nations. You are putting the victim of terror and the perpetrator of terror at parity and equivalence. Nothing could be worse than this. That's the phrase he used. That's the phrase he used. And we've been attacked. They are the people who attack us. And you bring a political, a diplomatic, and a moral equivalence between the two.
But I think they pointed out that our former Chief Minister of Karnataka, my home state, talked about how Pulwama would help.
Yeah, it should not have been done. I have no doubt in my mind it should not have been done. It was a statement which should have been avoided by everybody. This has nothing to do with India's domestic politics. It has something to do with India's security. And therefore, the party took a very categorical stand on that issue.
But coming to the general elections itself, do you think Pulwama would influence the outcome
well,
of the...
I won't, because by answering this question, I would again be linking it to domestic elections. But I'll still answer a question which you have not asked. and that answer is, I don't want to sound immodest, but what is the choice? What is the choice? And the choice is, one, we've had at least 4 to 5 experiences of these so-called Mahagathbandhans. You had the Chandrasekhar experiment, you had the Charan Singh experiment, the Devagowda experiment, the I.K. Gujral, even the V.P. Singh experiment. Its longevity is about 6 to 8 months. So are we going to vote in April and May this year for a 6-month government or a 5-year government? I think that's the first question.
But you had a coalition government, you were part of it.
You see, I'll tell you, I can understand a coalition government where a ruling party has 200, the main party has 200, close to 200, 250, 280 seats. A coalition with a strong nucleus is possible. But when you have somebody in Uttar Pradesh or somebody in Andhra Pradesh or somebody in West Bengal or those who have no hope of ever being anything except single digit or double digit. And then you say all of us who don't think alike, who have no common program at the moment. Our common program, as I said, the Nawabs of negativity, is that we have to remove one man. That's the single common program. They can have actually a common minimum program of one sentence. And then you don't know how much is the longevity. Now look at the stakes that India has in it. You are the fastest growing economy. You have a lot of, your first industrial revolutions over the years have bypassed you. This is the first opportunity in history that you have for catching up economically. You have serious threats to your national security. You have the largest exponential growth of your middle class going on. Your rural economy, a lot of money is being pumped in. And therefore, your infrastructure is becoming much better by the day. And suddenly you have people with such inadequate understanding of politics. And the level of debate going on in this country is at really 2 or 3 levels. There is one debate: how does India grow faster? How does India secure itself? What kind of a security do we require, etc. And the other debate is, वो 15 उद्योगपतियों के ऋण माफ किए, विद्यार्थियों को भी कर दो. If that's the best point, now which 15 industries, nobody ever knows. But the second debate is, now we have a caste combination in a state, so we'll do better. The third is that declare my state, and then every state economically weaker than you will say, everybody will have a special status. And the consequences of all this is going to be that India, that is a union of states, so you need a powerful union and powerful states, will end up becoming a confederation of states. In this economic situation, in this security challenge, that's the last thing you need in India's national interest. India has to have a powerful central government. It has to be a union of states where there is a powerful union, a strong union. You can't be a confederation of states, and then depending on your vote bank requirements, you get into what kind of policy the country will frame.
But it isn't just a single point agenda of ruining Mr. Modi. One of the things that they stress is the lack of jobs, or people having proper wages. I mean, we've had this debate, but let's not get into that. Their argument or their accusation is that you promised a certain number of jobs when you came to power in 2014.
Well,
that has not happened. And that is one of the big issues that this election has.
I think, Raj, you are being very kind to people. I have never in Indian politics seen the kind of fake campaigns which have taken place. The biggest fake campaign was Rafale. Now is the time to decide for this country. Literally, I would say, the political crime committed in 2012. When you suddenly abandoned, when everybody approved the Rafale, you abandoned it. So, if it had been approved in 2012 and the contract entered into, you would have had supplies by now. And what would have been the impact? That you didn't have to reach Balakot. Your aircrafts could be flying in India and targeting some...
No, but I'm talking about jobs.
No, I'm coming to the answer. I'm coming to the jobs. I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to run away from the jobs issue, because that's a fake campaign, and I'll come to this. Then you come to a second campaign, 15 industrialists. Now, we've thrown them under the IBC out of management. You are the ones who gave them those loans without securities. So, a completely fake campaign. Then when you had no other issues, the EVM, a fake campaign. And then suddenly this jobs appears. Now, let me talk on first common sense. There are no structured job data as in the US which comes out in India. You can't be growing at 7.5% consistently over 5 years. If you take it on a cumulative compounded basis, you are looking at something like a huge growth in the country, and not a job has been created. Now, that can only happen in one situation. And that one situation is, your productivity levels have improved to such great levels that lesser people can do the same job. So if you had between your television channels and radio channels and your magazine, 2,000 people, suddenly the productivity levels improve and then you have 200 people who can do it. Well, that hasn't happened in India. And therefore, if your economy in 5 years, on a cumulative basis, grows at 7.5% for 5 years, so to say, well, a job is not created. Well, if the...
No, is there a job crisis or not in the country?
I'll tell you. Of course, you need a faster economy, you need a bigger economy, you need more jobs. You need more jobs in the structured sector. India, bulk of the employment is also in the informal sector. And therefore, there is no way they are able to capture it. And the best answer to this is, we've seen government after government since 1947 for a 5-year period. This is the only 5-year period that I can say, maybe except the initial 1 or 2 governments when the country was still growing, which have functioned without any social or economic agitation in the country. Even when you speak in terms of real wages, let us, because of expansion of the resource space, let's say a very large part of India is the government sector. We were able within a matter of 2 to 3 months implement the 7th Pay Commission, OROP. As far as the working class is concerned, the trade unions, not a single major agitation they could mobilize. Because minimum wages, we announced an increase, gratuity we increased, bonuses we increased, the informal sector workers, Asha and Anganwadi and so on. For 20 years, they got the same thing. I increased it suddenly 4 months ago by 50% in one go. So we've been able to add to even the incomes of those people. If we hadn't done it, remember in UPA 2, the kind of agitation in city after city people used to be, and that's the reason. That's the reason at the end of 5 years, after a long time, you have a government which is going in on a pro-incumbency environment and not an anti-incumbency environment. And the best proof of this is that even in a city like Delhi, a political party which got created on a platform of anti-Congressism and their corruption says this party is too powerful, we have to become a gang against them. So so there should be some social tremors going on in the society. There should be some anti-incumbency visible somewhere.
But you're seeing that distress in rural India, agrarian distress particularly.
Well, I'll
and if you look at it, this government has focused on production, on tonnage, as someone was saying, but not on income. And you'd come up in your final budget, the interim budget, with a SOP for them, 6,000 rupees SOP. Haven't you, in some senses, failed on the agrarian front?
Absolutely no. We've done more for the rural areas, and I say it without fear of contradiction, than any other government of the power, and I'll answer it. Today, 91% of India's villages are connected by a regular road. That's a village infrastructure. It adds to village economy. I increased the amount spent on rural roads threefold in the last 5 years. Manrega, they used to say 40,000 crores, spend 28,000. We've been now crossing 60,000 crores year after year. So the landless labor, etc., when you say, oh, only the landed farmer will get this support, what about the landless? Well, you have a 60,000 crore parallel annually going to them. Every village home has been electrified. And those 4 crore homes which didn't have electricity and who couldn't afford it have been given at government expense. 4 years ago, the Prime Minister announced sanitation as a part of Swachh Bharat. 38% of rural homes had sanitation facility. Today, we are close to 99. When do you remember in history that India having implemented its programs at this speed? Cooking gas. You'll shortly have India, and 8 crore of them families. There are 25 crore families in India. The BPL would be anything between 8 and 9 crores. 8 crore of them will switch over their cooking methodologies, the below poverty line people, at government expense. Now, isn't it a part of the rural expenditure? You are now building almost 50 lakh homes every year and giving it to the homeless. 6 crore people have to get it. And by 2022-23, almost every village home will be a pakka house in India. That's a part of rural infrastructure. Then as far as agriculture is concerned, from Manrega to the income support, to the crop insurance, to the irrigation programs which are unimplemented, and that's how productivity goes up.
But I mean, one of the examples of the fact, you say that the government is going with incumbency and not anti, is that in the way your alliance partners, some of them have deserted you, and the fact that when you have, whether it is the JDU in Bihar or now the Shiv Sena, that they've driven a hard bargain, and in fact you've yielded more to them than that. Is that a sign that you all are worried that you are not going to get the majority in 2019 that you got in 2014?
Well, I won't speak about my alliance partners because we've run a government with them and it's not proper for me. But I will only indicate to you that many people in Indian politics are good only when the going is good. So all of them are back. We are happy about it.
And finally, because I think we've run out of time, what is your prediction for 2019?
Well, I won't get into psephology, but I can only tell you my political conclusion: India is becoming a highly aspirational society. And I've said this in the past, no aspirational society has a lemmings complex that it opts for suicide as a collective cause.
Thank you. Thank you.